Okay, at the end of the last video I'd stopped at the point of saying that you don't want to make this potential change to the smoke map because you need to make sure you've actually got air available. So you're going to need to do something with the axis once you know what the axis values need to be, and you're going to need to not just change the axis because that's a meaningless change at this moment. You need to change the amount of air, so we need more air. Now, in order to get more air, we need to have a look and see what sort of fuel-air ratio we're going to consider acceptable. Now, I suggest that we just look around here, which is our sort of maximum boost or air values anyway. And we've got 18.15, 18.1, 18.17, maybe 18.29. So I'm going to say to myself that if I want to change these values across here, a fair value to use would be 18.1. I'm just going to say that's a reasonable number to use. Lots of people use a number of 16 on lots of remapping, so they would use a number of 16. I'm going to use that because it's there, so I'm going to use that 18.1 that's there. Okay, so I've got my fuel-air ratio of 18.1. Now, having got my fuel-air ratio of 18.1, I'm just for the moment going to put that there, 18.1, and I'm going to say to myself, well, what if I want to inject 60? And what if I want to inject, and again 18.1, what if I want to inject 70 milligrams? So what if I want to inject those? Now, excuse me while I'm going to just do that, and then I'm going to type 70. I did that on purpose because it's dragged the formatting across, saves me changing the formatting. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to do the same as that one as well, and drag that across there, then I'll get the formatting with it. So just ignore that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, and I'm doing it here, but the answer is going to be here basically, because what I want to know is what sort of value should I have in this area if I want those values in a map, 60 or 70. And so here I'm going to put equals that number multiplied by that number, and I get 1086. So in that area I'm saying that I'm probably going to want 1086. That's unfortunate because it's copying everything down and I didn't want to do that, so I'm just going to put 1086 in there and 1086 in there, and then I'm going to copy that whole idea across. So in other words, that has now multiplied that by that and put it in there, and I'm going to put 1267 in there and 1267 in there. Right, and then I'm going to use those same numbers, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide those numbers by 475 to give myself a clue as to what the boost should be. And so there's the boost above me, so I'm going to go to there and I'm going to say, right, what is that number, 1086 divided by 475, and it's 2, which clearly it isn't. And then I'm going to say in there, what is this number, 1267 divided by 475. Enter. Oops, spot the deliberate mistake, I forgot to put equals. Enter. Now that one's a pain in the sense that it's done it right and the one in front hasn't done it right, so I'm going to just go across to there, and unfortunately it's also moved this across, which is another nuisance, so I'm just going to redo that to remind people I actually wanted in there 1086 divided by 475. Okay, and what's that in normal figures? I've got probably too many decimal points on there, which doesn't help, so I'm just going to get rid of one of the decimal points, so I'll have 3. Right, And if we were looking at that as one of these numbers, then 2286 would literally look as 2286, and 2667 will look as 2667. And again, it doesn't like the formatting. I hate this sometimes when the formatting doesn't match what you want to do. I want that one to be no decimal points, but there we go. Okay, right, we finally got somewhere with it making sense, and that column there is for 60 milligrams and that column there is for 70 milligrams. And what does this all mean? It's all lots of numbers, lots of gobbledygook coming at us. But well, what it means is, look, 60 milligrams injected, suggested fuel at 18.1 fuel air ratio off suggested boost 2286, less than what we've already got. So we're fine. We don't have to worry. So 60 we can completely ignore because we're covered. It will work. 70, different ball game. 2667, not going to work, is it? We are going to have 2667, and we haven't got 2667. So we are going to need a new column for boost, and that new column is going to have to reach 2667. Now, maybe we might get away with calling it 2650. Maybe we should call it 2670. Once you get to these sort of areas, you know, you're in the lap of the gods in that respect. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that I'm going to need a new column. I'm going to need a new column for 70, not for 60. If I want, I can call this one 60. Wouldn't make much difference, would it? Because these values are good enough for this as far as we can tell. And so it's looking like I don't need to worry too much about that column. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that because it's just cluttering up the view. Right, so now we've got then the possibility of a new column, and we know we've got this number here. So we want a column which has got a value of 70 in it. It would be nice if these all worked straight away, wouldn't it? But it's not going to. Oh, I don't want to either, do I? Just settle for that for now. I'll make it bold. So we want a column with that 70 in it. So I'll just get rid of that. And we want it here to read 2667 or thereabouts. So I'll just get rid of these things that are cluttering up the place, and I'll go around and I'm going to get rid of these as well so that we're not left wondering what on earth all this other stuff is, having looked at it. So we're going to want a column here, and here we are going to want and we can play either side of that slightly if we want to. We can make these slightly lower in accordance with what we've got there, but the thing that we need to most concentrate on this point is the maximum at that point, because that's the one that might trip us up. So I don't mind just going across here and guessing these values. They will probably be guessable within reason, and I wouldn't have minded going across here and guessing these, because we could have done that using a graph and guessed as well. So an alternative would be to take a guess at what these are using a graph, because what we could have done is we could have just said, well, what's a reasonable figure here? We've got 2,500 more or less revs there. What we could have done is we could have just gone to there and we could have said, well, what does that look like on a graph? I'll pick the scatter graph, smooth curve, there it is, series. I'll just give it a name, so I'll call it 2499 revs per minute, because that will remind me what I'm talking about. And I'd like an x-axis that actually matches these values that I've got here, so I'll just say, well, okay, I'll have those there. And then very quickly I'm going to stick the legend at the bottom, and I'm going to add a whole load of grid lines, and then I'm going to say I'm finished. And then I'm just going to put that over there. And the reason I'm doing this like this is to see if we would have got anywhere near that. Would we... Oh, that's strange. Why has it done that? Never mind. Things don't line up. Very strange. But let's have a look and say to ourselves, well, what would we have done with these values? If we'd looked at a graph, would we have come up with 2667? Well, obviously not exactly 2667, but if we'd said to ourselves, right, where's that going? Well, it looks like we wouldn't have agreed with 60 being less than 25, does it? And 70, perhaps over here. It's difficult to pick, but I think we might have taken a guess that we needed somewhere around about 2700. If you're looking at this, if you was to continue that across 2700, maybe. Now, I don't know how people watching this feel about computers and graphs and stuff on computers, but certainly being an old fogey like me, at this point, if I was doing this right now and I had the video camera here, what I would do is I would do it on paper and then I would video that, because I would be just as happy to quickly draw this up on a piece of graph paper and then extend the line with a pencil on the graph paper and have a look at where 60 or 70 are likely to be, because for me that would give me a good enough answer. I find it very difficult to do that with Excel. You can, I mean, you can predict, you can put a straight line in, you can predict where the next points are going to be. If I do that on here, I'm effectively teaching people how to use Excel. And I mean, if you don't know how to use Excel, why am I teaching you it here? It just seems silly. So I'm not going to go into all of that. So if you want to do more of this on Excel and extend a graph and look for lines of best fit and the like, you can, and you can see what value you end up with. Or if you're old-fashioned like me, you could plot some of these points, plot a row on a piece of graph paper and use that to predict what sort of values that you would have. Any of those will do. Well, no, just get rid of that again. The important thing is to end up with something that makes sense to you and is not likely to do any harm to the engine, because it should give us enough information for what we need. Now, as I just said, before I digressed into that bit, you might want to... Oops, I've just pressed the wrong key by mistake. You might want to change these values as well in line with these. So in other words, you might want to say to yourself, if that number is X% smaller, I'll make this one X% smaller, if you follow what I mean. So in other words, if 2325 is 10% less, then you might want to make this one 10% less there, and so on. Now, I'm not going to do that right at this moment. It might be done ready for the next video, but I'm conscious that these videos at this point are taking too long, and that's going to bore everybody out of your mind. So I'm going to stop there and come back, as it were, because the next thing we need to look at is what will we do with the limiter, the boost limiter.